look at myself.
Yes. Hi there. Hi, we're on air. Mary Zophres, thank you for joining us. So as you're
Thanks for
working on, oh, thank you, yeah. So working as a costume designer on Interstellar, where do you start? Do you start with the space suits that they have to wear, or where do you begin?
Yes, that's where we started. After I read the script and got the job, actually, yeah, in very short order, I started doing research because I knew nothing about spacesuits. It's not my specialty. It's not my area of interest. So I started by doing research, and then yes, very, very quickly thereafter, we started the spacesuit. We went from sketch, and we did a lot of prototypes trying to get the. First, we were working on getting sort of the structure and the overall sort of profile of the suit correct. We knew we didn't want it puffy, sort of like Apollo, and we didn't want it as but it had to make sense and be practical, so it couldn't be as slim as sort of the Mercury was. And this is the reference, the American reference that I had used as research. But we knew we wanted to have a NASA aesthetic. So the first thing we did was sort of working on the profile and how to get the right amount of bulk. And every day it was trial and error, different pieces of the suit and developing it with. We were producing the suit in-house. We were all working at the Warner Brothers lot. We transformed one of the trailers that was right next to our production office into a tailor shop because we didn't want it to be farmed out to any other costume houses or to any special effects house. We wanted to build it all in-house, so nobody just, because when you're in a public costume house, in a public building place, you run people walking by and seeing what you're doing, and we really wanted to keep it under wraps until the film came out. So we produced the suit all in-house, and so it was great because every day, every minute of the day, you could oversee the details, like let's try this, and Chris was right in the building next door, though we would make sure that anytime there was something new and interesting to show him, he could come over and make sure that he liked that next, really like piece by piece by piece, we assembled the suit, and we had to do it pretty quickly. I had a 12-week prep total, and the first week was spent doing some research and getting it together, and so as time ran out, and then we went to location shooting all this sort of Earth stuff first, and we had a very small timetable to develop this suit. Plus, it had to be functional. So that was a whole nother. Once we got the look right, then you had to breathe in it. So that was a whole other thing. So.
And also act and emote in it. So how does that affect what you do?
Well, first we knew that, like I said, it all started. Everything was it was function and form, sort of melding at the same time for me. Like the way I approached the suit, like we knew from the very beginning that we wanted it to have a NASA aesthetic. We knew that we wanted it to have a sort of recycled, like using, because of the nature of the script, we wanted to make it look like it was used materials. And so we knew from the very beginning that we wanted to have an aged feel about it, that we didn't want it to be sleek and shiny. It was more functional, and so every detail I approached it like I didn't want to decorate it. Every detail on the suit was functional and for a utilitarian purpose, but then it also had to look good. And then once we kind of, and then we knew that, and Chris was felt really strongly about this, that the helmet should be sort of as small as we could, with still allowing the actor to get their head in it. And so by having it be a small scale, we didn't have to overscale the shoulder, and by having it a smaller scale, actually somewhat close to the actor and actually see their face. And we worked really closely with Hoyte when we were developing the shield and the visor and what kind of lens it had to be. And And it also had to function with sound because the actors had to hear direction from Chris and also hear each other. And so, once we got the look right, we were like, okay. And they're like, oh my God, we have to make it so sound can work in that, and there's no room left in the helmet.
Right.
And then we have to make it so they can breathe in it. A fan system in there, and so it was tricky, but it was such an interesting challenge for me because it's not. I had never really done a specialty costume like this before, and so I found it tremendously interesting. It was hugely challenging, but it was such a interesting thing for me because like that's what makes my do something new on every single movie that I do, and this was like way out of my wheelhouse, but at the same time, like it was, you get like that fear that like a fear of, oh my God, am I going to be able to make it work? And then you do, and so it's extremely satisfying when it worked.
Right, right. Now talking about the talking about the costume design on Earth, which is not quite as tricky, but nevertheless is still important because you're having to set up who this character is before he goes into outer space and also the characters around him. Can you talk about what went into the design of those costumes?
Yeah, well, the first thing, I read the script when I met with Chris and got, I read the script, walked out of the room, sat down, met with Chris. This is before I even knew I had the job. And it was an interesting way to have an interview because you're really read on the page. And I remember saying to him that it should be completely timeless. Like the nature of the script and the way, I don't know if I'm supposed to give too much away in this interview, but no, even though we're 50 years in the future, we don't want it to be, well, I'm not trying to predict how clothes are going to look. And also, I think part of the backstory is like, where are these people getting their clothes from? They're probably shopping if they're not shopping for them in a store, they're going to somebody's barn and getting something recycled. And it was very important for me to have a certain level of age and a certain level of just sort of classic styling, like nothing that's, and rural. So very, I wasn't trying to make it look like it was from the past, and I wasn't trying to future. I was trying to make it look very neutral and used and recycled and believable. And I think we achieved that. Like, when I watched the movie, I was like, seems like everybody's wearing what was the point. Like, it's nothing that draws attention to itself. It's nothing that, and that's difficult to achieve, but at the same time, you don't want to see the effort that it took to get it there. And so we did a lot of pulling and used clothing, and we did a lot of aging, but it's not like holes and lots of dirt, just like worn. Needed to do that because even the principals needed multiples because of driving doubles, stunt doubles, etc. So we started out, many of those clothes started out, and 3 or 4 of them, and we just aged really, we had it aged really well. We had a great ager dyer age the civilian clothes, but he did a great job, I think, in aging the space suits.
Right.
But without that kind of, you have a great crew behind you, and I'm overseeing it all, and it feels very natural, and it felt like a very naturalistic and real feel to it, and it's just, it's what I do. So it's like, it's a challenge, but it's not, it just felt like I was really pleased with how I call it the civilian part of the movie. I thought it looked natural and nothing was glaring. It just sort of flowed with the nature of the film. Like I said, nothing drew its attention to itself, and it shouldn't have. It wasn't a movie about the civilian clothes, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's really interesting how those scenes set on Earth, even though they're set in the future, the common practice in films set in the future is to create this otherworldly quality of it. To sort of distance the audience from what they're seeing on the screen from what their real life is like. Whereas this feels like something that is happening in the here and now and could very easily be our future. You know, sans, of course, crops growing and, you know, things are, you know, the planet is dying, right? Was that a part of your initial concept of it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that part of what attracted me to this project, aside from working with Chris Nolan, who I loved the script and I loved the sentiment and the, I dare say this, politics, but it's the theme lesson to be learned from this. And so yeah, no, it was very much like I wanted it to feel real and very we wanted it to feel real and immediate, like, and I find that movie, and you wanted to care, you wanted the audience to feel like they could relate to what was happening in the movie, because it could be what happens to where we live. And so yes, it was to not distance and make the movie slick in any way, shape, or form, to make it feel like it's very much like the world that we live in. I mean, aside from slight stylistic differences, when you look 50 years ago, men are still wearing suits. It's not like they're all of a sudden wearing, sometimes the future is predicted and suddenly there's no collars on anything. Like, what? There's no collars on shirts and suits for 400, 500. It's just, that was very intentional, to answer your question, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and congratulations on the film. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.